Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Oi, imagina assim. Então,
Yeah. No, that was last week. Hello, Azar.
Hi, they caught the guy. They caught the Schwarzjäger.
Yeah, I saw it.
Just now. Sunset in Highland.
Wow.
Sunset in Highland. Isn't that something? Wow. When they want to do something, they can
They like to stay in the neighborhood, huh?
stay. I knew he would come back in the same area. He probably came back and passed by that place so many times.
Oh,
Yeah.
boy.
Yeah, that's something. What a bad
Terrible.
man.
Terrible what's happening.
He stabbed her 24 times, that poor girl.
My daughter lives on Sycamore right behind there.
My goodness, yeah, my goodness. Wow. Oh, boy.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, Mario.
Yes.
Hello,
So,
Dave.
how are you?
I'm always good.
yeah, I have to go.
Okay, bye.
Mario, I think you can give us a better view than your sweater.
Say it again?
You can give us a better view than watching your sweater.
Oh, okay.
Why, you don't like Argyle?
I love
Okay,
it.
hi, everybody.
Hello, Ernie.
Hello.
Hi, Ernie.
Good evening.
Ernie, did you stop the dance and then?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right.
We left off on page 38. Wearing tefillin all day.
Yes.
In the previous section, we discussed Alohas related to treating tefillin with proper respect. What some actions were permitted, some are forbidden. Why was that important? Because in the times of the Gemara, many people wore tefillin for the entire day until nightfall. Nowadays, though, most people don't wear tefillin all day, but only during the time when they daven. Where is the source of this change? So the Gemara Menachos indicates that the mitzvah of tefillin applies all day. Menachos Lamed Vav Amud Aleph. Ve'ad Mosai menichin ad Mosai menichin ad shetishkacham till shkias hachama till sunset. Rav Yaakov Omer ad shetichle regel man hashuk, until people in the markets are not in the market anymore. Ve'chacham Omer ad zman sheina, until you sleep. And the Gemara continues to discuss the details of the opinions mentioned, and which opinion is accepted as the halacha. But it seems clear that all agreed that the mitzvah of wearing tefillin applies nearly the entire day until dark. And this was confirmed by the ruling of the Rambam, who rules that the mitzvah applies until sunset, and that a person should strive to wear tefillin for the entire day. So this is a footnote before we read the Rambam. According to most opinions, including that of the Shulchan Aruch, on a Torah level, tefillin should be worn at night as well. Hazal instituted a decree not to wear tefillin at night due to concerns for falling asleep in them, which involves the questions discussed above of passing gas and hechsach hadas. The decree of Chazal is the basis for the different opinions in the Gemara here. All of them agree that one should not wear tefillin at night. The Rambam, which we're going to learn now, is a notable minority opinion who holds that even on a Torah level, tefillin are not worn at night. And that's why later on we're going to see when it relates to women, tefillin are referred to as a time-bound mitzvah because they are not worn on Shabbos and Chagim, and all, but not because they're not worn at night. We'll see. It's considered mitzvahs aseh shazman grama either because they're not worn at night, or because they're not worn on Shabbos or Chagim. Because not everybody holds like the Rambam that there's no mitzvah at night. It seems like the normative opinion, not the Rambam, was there was one at night. So what took it out of the realm, normally a mitzvah that you do day and night is considered not time-bound. But a mitzvah that's done only in the day or only in the night is time-bound. So if it's noig at night and noig in the day, why is it considered a time-bound mitzvah? Because it's not worn on Shabbos, because Shabbos is ois, and it's not worn on Yom Tov either because of ois. So that's just a detail in halacha that we should know, that the issue of whether Laila is man tefillin or not is a machlokas. So the Rambam says, man anachas at tefillin biyom v'lo b'layla, shnemer miyamim yamima, hu kazu hi mitzvahs tefillin. V'chein shabbos v'yomim tovim enus man tefillin. So you don't put on tefillin those days. Shnemer v'hayala os, v'shabbos v'yomim tovim hein atzman ois. U'me'ema says man anachason. When is the time you have to first start putting on tefillin? It's when you can see your friend arba amis. V'yakireu b'shiyakir, and it's until achetishka chama, until the sun sets. Says the Rambam. According to the Rambam, you should wear the tefillin all day. Shemitzvasim kach. Amru alav al Rav Talmidu shel Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Shekol yom of lo ra'u sh'alach arba b'lo Torah b'lo tzitz b'lo tefillin. That Rav and Shmuel, right? Rav was the Talmud of Rebbe. No one ever saw him without reciting words of Torah, without tzitzit, without tefillin. Never seen walking 4 cubits without reciting words of Torah. I saw someone like that in my lifetime. When I was in Israel doing research in 1977, I was at Hadassah for the summer. But my best friend, Alan Berkowitz, was learning in the Mir Yeshiva. And I would spend Shabbosim with Alan in the dorm there. Rav Chaim Shmulevitz was alive and was giving shiurim still. And he was there on a Shabbos. And I saw him walking from the stairway into the, it was into the shul or just for Kiddush. And you could see his lips moving. And Alan Berkowitz, my chaver, told me that Rav Chaim Shmulevitz was always seen speaking Torah. When it says, Rav was never seen walking 4 cubits without reciting words of Torah, that's what it meant. There's tzaddikim that literally their mouths did not stop from reciting Torah. So much so that he told me a story that there was one of the Bachrim was assigned to help Rav Shmulevitz walk down the stairs because he was elderly. And apparently one of the Talmidim walking him down the stairs, they slipped a step. And Rav Shmulevitz slipped, but the student held him up. But the student looked at Rav Shmulevitz and his face had turned white. So the student said, Rebbe, what's wrong? What's wrong? He says, oh, this is the first time in 17 years that I've stopped reciting Torah.
Sounds like David HaMelech at the end of his life.
Right. So anyways, they say about Rav, but there were people in our generation, L'chura, that were living on that kind of standard. Nevertheless, the Rishonim, as early as the Rosh and the Tur, already note that the common custom in their day was not to wear tefillin all day. Why? Due to concern for maintaining cleanliness. Rishonim disagree about a related issue, namely whether the Torah mitzvah involves wearing tefillin all day or just for a short amount of time. And perhaps Minat Torah, you only wear it part of the day. And wearing tefillin the entire day is only a rabbinic mitzvah. It seems from Tosfos in Shabbos 49a in the Ritva there, that the mitzvah deraisa is fulfilled after wearing tefillin for a short time, while the Rambam, the one we just learned, appears to hold that the mitzvah deraisa extends over the entire day. The Pri Megadim, right, a later Achron, who's a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, is unsure which approach is correct, though he concludes that one fulfills the mitzvah by wearing tefillin even for a short time. There's a Bir Aloha in 38.2, the Mishnah Berurah, who brings this whole sugya here. So
Ernie, as I told you, the one person that I saw that wears tefillin the whole day, I mean, I just met him in Eretz Yisrael, Reb Nevinsol, and he really he goes with tefillin the whole day. Doesn't talk too much. I guess he talks Torah the whole time, and learns.
We're going to see the difficulties that you run in. Someone on the level of Rav Nevinsol doesn't have those difficulties, but we'll see for us. Says the Rosh, "V'ha'idna she'en regilin lanichan al b'shas tefillah, b'kal yachol adam lizar b'osasha." The issue is you can't have hesach hadas. You have to keep a guf naki, cleanly body. So during the time of tefillah, we assume that people can do that, but longer than that, we're concerned. And the Shulchan Aruch accepts this practice as the normative halacha and writes, he basically cites the Torah word for word, that the great challenge in upholding the standards warranted by tefillin precipitated the practice of leaving tefillin on one's body only for the duration of tefillah. Says the Shulchan Aruch in Lamed Zayin, mitzvasen liyosen olav kol hayom. Avot mipnei shetzrichim guf naki, shelo yafiach behem, you shouldn't pass wind, v'shelo yasich daitum behem, you shouldn't take your mind off of it. Ve'en kol adam yachol lizar behem. Most people can't be careful with that. Noagu, the minig is, shelo lanicham kol hayom. Mikol makom, tzorach kol adam lizar behem, liyosem alav b'shatz kriyas shema tefillah. At a minimum, you should be wearing tefillin during kriyas shema tefillin and Shemona Esrei. The Mishnah Berurah writes that some people are also accustomed to learning Torah with tefillin upon them for a short time after tefillah. He writes, though, that at the same time, a person must be careful not to become involved with frivolous matters while tefillin are upon him. He's saying, Chol Adam should wear their tefillin just during tefillah. Anshe Maisa, people who are accustomed to do things on a more machmir level. You shouldn't speak while you're wearing tefillin. Dvarim b'telim. B'vad isur dvarim b'telim, hu ba ayidei zeli, they has a chadas from the tefillin.
I can say that Ramosha did wear his tefillin for a short time. I never even realized that, I must say, till now. But he always wore his tefillin after davening while he was learning for like a short period of time.
Then took him off. And then took him off.
Correct.
So he was following this Mishnah Berurah.
Yeah, I never realized it. That's right. Yeah.
Okay. It's evident from the Mishnah Berurah that it's inappropriate to speak idle chatter while wearing tefillin, which is another reason for not wearing tefillin all day. How does the current practice of not wearing tefillin all day affect the halachos and leniencies we learned about previously concerning the sanctity? We mentioned earlier that according to Piskei Teshuvos, one can defend the practice of those who take a drimmel, who doze off while wearing tefillin. However, it seems from his words that nowadays it's ideal to avoid this occurrence because we wear tefillin for a relatively short time. With regarding to eating and drinking, we saw that the halacha permits these actions while wearing tefillin, provided one does not eat a full meal or get drunk. However, in light of the fact that we do not wear tefillin for more than a short time during the day, the Mishnah Berurah is uncertain whether one should refrain from eating or drinking when possible. Right? These dinim, you can eat with tefillin, you can drink with tefillin. That's probably meant only for people that are wearing tefillin all day. He's mistopic whether such a person should eat or drink while he's wearing those tefillin during that time. However, the Piskei Teshuvos cites a number of contemporary authorities who rule that there may be circumstances in which it is not necessary to be stringent to refrain from snacking or drinking with tefillin on. Omnan, im kavanaso ritzuya, leman yuchal leishev b'tefillin od zman b'tachanunin oblim b'toira. Let's say he needs to take a snack in order to daven a little longer, or to say more tehillim, or to learn some Torah. He can eat something, Israeli says. If he has a mind take off the tefillin already, so then he should not eat or drink. He should take the tefillin off and then eat. It's worth noting that although common practice is to wear tefillin only when davening chakras in the morning, in recent years, it has become less unusual to see people wearing tefillin other times as well. In an increasing number of yeshivot and communities, especially in Israel, some people wear tefillin throughout the day, especially while they are studying Torah, being careful to maintain a clean body and appropriate thoughts. Rav Dov Lior writes a tshuva to yeshiva students who want to wear tefillin. He rules that it's permitted when done in a group of 10 at a minimum, or in private in one's home, but otherwise he counsels against the practice. Now, what about women in tefillin? The Mishnah in Bracha states that women are potter from tefillin. The Gemara explains that the requirement to put on tefillin is a mitzvah saseh shazman grama. Again, like the Beis Yosef on his commentary on the Tur and the Mishnah Berurah bring that the reason why it's considered a time-bound mitzvah is because it's not worn on Shabbos or on Chagim. They don't bring this issue of night like the Rambam. And women are exempt from mitzvah saseh shazman grama. This principle is derived by the Gemara from the mitzvah of tefillin, which is mentioned in Kriyat Shema together with the mitzvah of teaching Torah to one's children. Just as women are not obligated in the mitzvah of Torah study, because it says livneichem v'lo livnosechem, so too women are not obligated to wear tefillin. That's the Gemara in Kiddushin 34a. So the Mishnah here in Bracha says Noshim avodim uktanim pturim mikriyat Shema uminat tefillin. The Gemara says Pshita. Of course. It's a mitzvah saseh shazman grama. That's the pshita aspect of it. So we know for sure that they would be putter. Or it says Maud, I might have thought hoil the iskis lemezuzah, right? Tefillin is right next to the pasuk of mezuzah. Women are obligated in mezuzah. So maybe you'd think that they'd be obligated in tefillin. Kamash Malan that they're not. So according to this principle, women would be parted from putting on tefillin, but would be permitted to do so if they choose. Gentlemen, our women, our wives, are potter from netilas lulav, because it says ulukachtem lachem bayom harishon. It's clearly a mitzvah saseh shazman grama. But our wives, if they choose to, can bench lulav. And our wives do so. Women can choose to participate in time-bound mitzvahs if they so desire and make a bracha on it. Remember, we learned the Sfardim don't. The Sfardim don't have the same principle. So if it's women don't put it on because it's a mitzvah saseh shazman grama, but l'chora they have a right to put it on. In fact, the Gemara in Eruvin states that Michal, Shaul HaMelech's daughter, who was one of David HaMelech's wives, wore tefillin without opposition from the Chachamim. It says Masechta Eruvin Tzadik Vav Amud Aleph, Michal Bas Kushi, Haisa Manechas Tefillin, V'lo Michu Bo Chachamim, and the Chachamim didn't protest. However, the Yerushalmi has a different tradition. Hare Michal Bashul Haisa Loveshes Tefillin, V'lo Michu, Chachamim. The initial approach of the Yerushalmi is like the Bavli, that the Chacham didn't protest. Rav Chizkiah b'shem Rav Avo, Michal Bashul Michu bo Chachamim. No, he had a tradition that the Chachamim protested. We're not happy with Michal wearing tefillin. There is a widespread legend that Rashi's daughters also wore tefillin. However, it seems that there's no hard evidence or any sources to support this. Okay? Now, Rishonim, such as Tosfos and Eruvin 96a, and the Ritva in Kiddushin 31a, explain that the reason why the Chachamim were concerned, according to the Yerushalmi, stem from the issue of guf naki, physical cleanliness, that we have learned about earlier in the Shir. It should be noted, says the footnote, that Rishonim differ slightly in their exact formulation of this concern. In addition, it's not entirely clear from the Rishonim how this concern of guf naki relates to women specifically. I mean, men also don't have a problem keeping a guf naki. Right? So hang on, it's a very good point that we have to clear up. In practice, the Ramah rules in the name of the Kolbo and the Marami Rottenberg that women should not put on tefillin at all. There were some Rishonim who permitted women to wear tefillin, including the Rashba and the Sefer HaChinuch. Nevertheless, these opinions have not been accepted by the mainstream halachic sources, as you will see from the continuation of the Shir.
Could be the Rashba's mother put on tefillin, right? Wasn't the Rashba a grandson of Rashi?
No.
Oh, not the Rashba. Okay, someone else.
The Rashbam,
Rashbam is grandson.
Correct.
but not the
Excuse
Rashbam.
me.
The Marshal lived in the Rashba lived in Barcelona.
Right, the posting Kedusha.
In fact, Yaakov and I were in the Rashba's shul in Barcelona. It's a little underground. It's an amazing
Underground. Yeah, we've been there.
Right.
Ernie, let me ask you about this halacha Moshe Sinai. When that was given, tefillin is basically halacha Moshe Sinai.
No. We said that there were 8 aspects of tefillin, that they have to be black, they have to be square. Those details were halacha Moshe Sinai, but it says ukshartem la'os hayadecha. It's a beferish dika deraisa.
I understand, but ukshartem la'os hayadecha. But is it referring to?
That's directly connect. That's the direct mitzvah of tefillin midoraisa.
Okay,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
is that male and female, or it's just male?
No, so we're doing this analysis that if it's a mitzvah saseh that is tied to time, because you don't put on tefillin on Shabbos and you don't put on tefillin on Chagim, then women are potter from it. Now, like we said before, a woman who's potter from a mitzvah is allowed to take on the chiyuv, like lulav, like shofar. They're not chayiv and shofar. They've taken that mitzvah on. They choose to do it. So these Rishonim are pointing out that the women could choose to do a mitzvah saseh shazman grama. That's what the Rashba and the Sefer Chinuch were why they could choose to do that mitzvah. Nevertheless, these opinions have not been accepted by the mainstream halachic sources, as it is evident from the continuing. Moreover, there is little evidence that a significant number of women in the medieval era wore tefillin in practice. So the Ramah in the name of the Tzurba M'Rabanan said women should not wear it.
What about talis? Is that a mitzvah shazman grama too? Men wear it the whole day. Wear it in Shabbos and Yom Tov.
It is a mitzvah saseh shazman grama because you don't wear it at night.
Yeah, but they could. The chiyuv is not there, but they still wear it at night. They wear it talis cotton at night. They can wear it at night. They just take it off when they go to bed. But we don't take it off.
It's considered a mitzvah saseh shazman grama because you're potter from tzitzis at night. There's no chiyuv at night. So it's a mitzvah saseh shazman grama. Women are potter from it. So the shaila is, I think we dealt with this as well before when we were learning tzitzis.
Right.
The same thing. Why don't women put on tzitzis? Because there, it's not a mitzvah chiyuvi, right? It's if you have a baguette of dalit kanfis, so we men during davening, we have to make sure that we have it. And then we extended it during the day. But that's really why women are, because it's not really a mitzvah chiyuvi. It's a mitzvah kiyumi based on wearing a garment of 4 garments. And they didn't demand women do that.
Ernie, you want to hear Maisa Shehoya?
Yeah.
This is Yaakov. Okay. You know, we just came back for the wedding from Miami.
Mazel tov.
Mazel tov.
Yaakov and Gaby married off a grandson in Florida.
Mazel tov.
Mazel tov. Mazel tov. From your son or your daughter? Which child?
Moishi Goldfinger.
Moishi. Wow.
Totally, yeah. So Maisa Shehoya, this is going back some years when Rabbi Korupkin was a rabbi in Pennsylvania, Allentown, Pennsylvania. I was there. And a woman came during the week. She had lost a relative. She was saying Kaddish in the women's section, and she wore tefillin. The rabbi went over to her, and it says, this was not our minhag. Women do not wear tefillin. End of the story. She never came back.
Okay, well.
Right.
Were there any other Orthodox schools in Allentown she could have gone to?
No.
There was a conservative shul, and my son-in-law, Rabbi Korupkin, approached him to learn Gemara together. Okay? What happened after a while, he became so involved that he became too religious for the congregation and lost his job.
I was zoicha to daven in that shul a number of times for smachos of Rabbi Korupkin. That was a very interesting shul. They had a lot of very interesting people there in that shul. Okay, listen, this is a problem over the last, Rabbi Riskin has given to those on this forum here, many of us have heard shiurim from Rabbi Riskin, who's always been a flag bearer for getting women more involved in Yiddishkeit, because he recognized he had in his shul women neurosurgeons, high-level government people, and they would come to shul on Simchas Torah, and every 5-6-year-old kid would get an aliyah, and they were not allowed to have one. And you know what I'm saying? It in the modern era, we had very educated intellectual women. It was really problematic. How like what Jacob just told us a story. Somebody wanted to come and express their spirituality, and it was not taken well. And so that's why I think over the last 20, 30 years, we've seen you have all of the various the women who are posek halacha. What is that? The yoetzet halacha and other things like that are as an outgrowth of this issue.
Well, Rabbi
I've
Riskin,
never seen a yoetzet push for wearing tefillin. They're following normal halacha, normative halacha, which as we're learning tonight, we're seeing it really was never accepted by the women, even in the Middle Ages, to wear the tefillin.
well, you have in Rabbi Riskin's community now appointed the first woman who is the sole Rav in a shul. I forget her name, Shuli something or other, but she gives Shiurim on Torah and Moshe. She has, and Rabbi Riskin has said it's fine. So
again, it's a process. So let's just see further. Although the Ramah does not mention it directly, the Kolbo and the Maram affirm that the concern is gufnaki. It seems that these authorities accepted the Yerushalmi's approach concerning Michal due to the concern of gufnaki. Says the Shulchan Aruch, Noshim vavodim pturim mitfilin, v'nei shumitzvos aseh shazman grama. Okay. The Manoshim Roitzim Lachmal Atzman Moichin Biyadin. Ramos says, and if the women want to do it, we protest. We don't allow it. Exactly what Rabbi Korupkin did in the shul in Allentown. Now, Sydney asked, what exactly is the specific problem of guf naki as it relates to women more than men? We also have the same problem of guf naki. So the Aruch HaShulchan explains that the concern of guf naki indeed applies to both men and women. It's not that women are menstruate, that they have a different issue. No, it's shama yafiach bahen, and that exists whether you're a man or a woman. Since men are obligated in the mitzvah, their requirement to perform the mitzvah is unequivocal. But because it's hard to maintain the strictures of tefillin, men today only wear tefillin for a limited amount of time. Women, on the other hand, are potter, and due to the issue of guf naki, should not wear tefillin at all. So that's the sheet of the Aruch HaShulchan that we all follow, basically. Noshim p'turim mitfillin. V'imrotzin lachmal atzman moichin biyadin. We protest. Why? The kivan to tefillin tzarch zehiras yisir meguf naki. You need very special, careful attention to your body. And acha noshim shemuchuyavim. Men though have no out. They're mechuyev. Behechrach shizaru ben b'shas kriyash ma tefillah. So we say, okay, put them on, but just wear them during Kriya Shema and Shmon Esrei. And v'lachen manichin kol hayom. They don't wear it all day. Yeah, you have Rabbi Nebenzahl. You have, Yechidim. V'imkei noshim shepeturos. Noshim are potter. Lachen lama yachnisu atzman b'chashash gadol kazeh. We may not realize it, but not having a guf naki while you're wearing tefillin is probably much worse than being Mekayim the mitzvah. Ve'etzlan b'shas kriya shema tefillah kol hanoshim kol hayom lefichach ein manichnos on tefillin. Even putting it on during kriya shema namida for them is like putting on tefillin a whole day. So we don't have them put on tefillin. Now, the Magen Avraham is cited for a different explanation. In his opinion, it's because women are not obligated in the mitzvah. Therefore, they are less concerned with maintaining a guf naki. If you're mechuyev, I got to be really careful. If you're not mechuyev, you'll be more lax. Other potential explanations include the possibility that women specifically have a more difficult time maintaining cleanliness, perhaps due to caring for children, or the consideration of menstrual or other discharges. So that is mentioned.
And nevertheless, Ernie, we know that if men are in a hospital for a period of time, they're encouraged to put on tefillin even if they're in bed. If you start talking about guf naki, I mean, that would be, perhaps that should not be allowed.
Well, in bed, depends what the state. If he has a catheter, now catheter, we'll get to that. I mean, catheter is a closed system. But in terms of what his bowel functioning is, if he's got any bowel problems, he wouldn't be able to put on tefillin. If he's passing gag, if he can't control, and if there's material nearby, you wouldn't even be able to daven. You have to stay daled amos away from soa and things like that. So you're absolutely correct, Bernie. You might be in a situation, there's somebody else in the room who you have no control over, and there may be problems there. So absolutely, but if you're in a private room and maybe you have an orthopedic problem which is not affecting your other functioning, then there's no problem with putting on tefillin if you're in the hospital in certain situations.
You're saying on a selective basis.
Well, yeah, it depends on what's going on. Let's say you don't get admitted for eye surgery these days, but other issues, if it leads to problems with cleanliness, you wouldn't be able to put on the tefillin. I agree.
Understood.
The large majority of contemporary poskim, Ashkenazi and Sephardic, accept the Ramah's approach as the normative one, which means he ruled against women putting it on. So the Pnine Halacha, Rav Eliezer Melamed, is one of the few poskim who is slightly more lenient, as he was concerning women wearing tzitzis. When we went through this, he also had some leniency regarding tzitzis. You can go back, volume 8, Shiur 3. He writes that if a woman does so privately, one need not protest. Though if asked the question, one should respond to her that she should not wear tefillin. That's the Pnei Halacha, Rebbe Eliezer M'Rabanan, who we've quoted many, many times. And Rav Yehuda Henkin writes in the Bnei Bonim, it's Shilas and Shuvas, to a female questioner that she should not put on tefillin, but find other avenues of connection to Judaism and halachic observance. So the Rav Henkin responds to this woman, you should not put on tefillin. The way the poskim, he cites our halacha here, they allowed women to learn Talmud Torah for anything they need. But tefillin is not something that they need. This was Rav Henkin's son. Rav Henkin learned with his father, Rav Eliyahu Henkin, who was, as we've said before, the posek before Rav Moshe took over, after Rav Henkin passed away.
So just to finish what I was saying, I just looked it up. Her name is Shira Mervis, and according to Wikipedia, quote, she is the first woman to hold the position of sole spiritual leader of an Orthodox community in Israel. Shira was officially installed by the chief rabbi of Efrat, Shlomo Riskin. So there you go.
There you go. There you go. He's been a
Yeah.
That's Cheryl Mervis?
Shira, S-H-I-R-A,
Oh,
M-A-R-I-L-L-I, Marilli, I guess that's her maiden name, Shira Marilli Mervis.
I remember the Rabbi Ephraim Mervis is the chief rabbi of the British Empire.
right.
Correct.
Yeah, I think this is his niece, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about a machshava point. We pray in the Hiratzoin, which is prior to putting on tefillin, that the tefillin brings us great spiritual gains and prevent us from sinning. We're commanded to put tefillin on our arm, v'shineged alev, next to our heart, to subjugate our desires and our evil thoughts, and to divert our desires and our thoughts only to lavodoso yisbarach shemo, to make our thoughts subservient to Hashem. So that's the lave that controls the taivas and the machshavos. V'larosh neged hamoach, she'haneshama shebemoichi, that the neshama is in our brain, imshar chushe v'kochos, with our other senses and our strengths. Kulam yiyu meshubarim lavodoso yisbarach shemo. They should all be subservient to Hashem. The blessing of the tefillin should allow me to live a long life. A holy life. Holy thoughts. Without any kind of thinking about sin. Our Yetzer Hara should not seduce us. So as we've discussed, we should probably focus on the tefillin when wearing them in order to properly fulfill the mitzvah. If one can do so, the impact upon the person could be enormous. May we all merit to fulfill the mitzvah in the proper manner, bring holiness and blessing into our lives. Let's continue. Page 59. This is the laws of the sanctity of Tefillin 2 and the differentiation between the Tefillin of Rashi and the Tefillin of Rabbeinu Tam. Previous year, we discussed the laws pertaining to a person's behavior while wearing Tefillin. The first part of this year, we will deal with the proper care for and reverence for Tefillin while they are not being worn. And the second half, we will study the sources related to the different opinions about the order of the parshios placed in the tefillin, and the dispute between Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam. In discussing various elements of Kedushas tefillin, we'll focus on 4 primary issues. There's a ban on hanging tefillin. sitting upon a bench in which or upon which the tefillin, the prohibition of intimate relations in a room in which there are tefillin, or tefillin falling on the floor. So it's common for a person to hang clothing upon a hook or a hanger. In earlier times, the tefillin were considered part of a person's clothing. The Gemara in Brachos discusses if the tefillin may also be hung, or if this should be prohibited as a bizoyon, a degradation of the tefillin. So says the Gemara in Brachos Chaf Daled Amud Aleph, Amrav Chanina, Ani ra'iti et Rabbi Shetala Tefillah. I saw Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he hung his tefillin. Meitzvei, I'll ask you a kasha, a toilet tefillah, either lo chayav. What do you mean? Someone who hangs his tefillin, his life will hang in balance. Dorshe chamuros amru, v'hayu chayecha tluyim l'cha mineged. Your life will hang in front of you. Zeh toilet tefillah. That's somebody who hangs his tefillin. So how can you tell me, Rav Chanina, that you saw Rabbi hanging his tefillin? So, loy kasha, habiritzu habiktitza. One, it depends. If you hung it by the strap or you hung it by the box. When the Brisa said that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi hung it, he hung it from the box with the straps dangling. And if you hung it upside down, you hung it by the straps and the box is dangling, that would be prohibited. That's one way of being metaretz the stira. V'boisema loishna ritzu v'loishna k'tzitza aser. You can't hang tefillin, period. Not by the box, not by the straps. Chitala Rebbe b'kistatala. Rebbe had a pouch, had a tefillin zekel, which had like a little, I guess, a lanyard, and he hung the lanyard on a hook, so we knew where his tefillin was. That's the Gemara. And Rashi there, Ze'atar l'tfilah, means the person whose life is hanging in the balance. Sha'atar chayav shaladan. Torah is the life of a person. And if you're going to hang the tefillin, it's like a reminder to you that you're going to be hung as like a punishment for hanging the tefillin, like mida keneged mida. And Rashi commenting on Beritzua, that means he hung the strap on the hook, the aktzitza and the box with the parchas are hanging below. Genaihu lahem, that's ugly. But in the Havim, in the first, before the Iboy Sema, but if you hang the box on the top and the straps are dangling, the box is going to hang on the wooden hook. That was the Havim. So according to Gemara's first answer to the stira, to the contradiction, it's permitted to hang the bayit of the tefillin, forbidden to hang it by the straps, leaving the bayit to dangle below. According to the second answer, you can never hang the tefillin. It's only permitted if you've put the tefillin in a tefillin zekel, and you hang the zekel. Rishon Shulchan Aruch adopt the stringent position of the second answer as the accepted halacha, according to which one may hang the tefillin, only if they are in their cases. It's a beautiful demonstration of how halacha is formed based on the Gemara. The Gemara had had a stira and a baraisa. It answered it. One was one way, which implied that you might be able to hang the tefillin. And the second Ibai was, no, it's always prohibited. And then eventually the Rishonim who paskined like the more stringent version. And that's the halacha. Says the Shulchan Aruch, Asr litlois tefillin, bein bebatin, bein beritzuas. Avol mutar litloisen bekissin, but you can hang them by the sack, exactly like the Gemara. Now, can you sit on the same surface as the tefillin? Respect for tefillin relates not only to the way in which they are put on or hung when they are not being used, but also how one relates to them when they are stored. The Gemara in Brachos 23b states that it's forbidden for a person to rest his legs upon a bag which holds his tefillin, as this is degrading. So you can imagine if you put your tefillin in your suitcase, and you're at an airport, you put your feet up on your suitcase, and your tefillin's in there, this is probably nogeya. On this basis, the Shulchan Aruch rules that a person may not put his tefillin under his legs. It also states that one may not place them on the side of his bed, because a person may end up leaning on them in his sleep. Right? Afilu aniach bekli toch kli. Even if you put it in a kli, let's say it's tefillin bag, and the tefillin bag is in another kli, osur lanicham tachas margloisa. You should not put your legs on top of it. So that's you have a tefillin in your tefillin zekel, and your tefillin zekel's in your suitcase. You got to be careful not to put your feet on it. Number two, lanicham b'mita keneged sido. You shouldn't leave it in the bed at his side, because dinan ketachas margloisa is like putting it on your feet. The Achronim, like the Mishnah Berurah, discuss a number of situations that may resemble these cases, including storing tefillin in storage compartment in synagogue pews and sitting upon suitcases in which the tefillin lie. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Safsalim shebebeit hakneset. Like, think about a piano bench, the old-fashioned piano benches that you'd open up and you'd have the music in the piano bench, right? So there are shuls that have benches that you could open up the seat and put things underneath it. The problem is, if you put tefillin there, you'd have a problem sitting on it. We don't have that today. We have it either in front of us, but the older versions had it that way, and they might put their talis and tefillin there. You shouldn't sit on benches. Yesh matirin. If there was a space of at least a tefach, mutter vada leishev ala safsalim. He wanted to give a heter like there's a halal tefach, which is 9 centimeters. Then you'd be allowed to do it. Uval nefesh, right? Somebody who's careful about his mitzvahs. Roy lo lachmir. Shelo b'mokom atchakam b'zeh. Should not sit on his tefillin. Ki tefillin yesh lizar b'kedushas me'od. However, if they were fixed to a wall with nails, then you could sit on the bench. Becomes like part of the wall, I guess. The Piskei Tshuva writes that it's technically permitted to place tefillin inside a suitcase or backpack on the floor. But he recommends not doing so unless another object separates at least a tefach between the tefillin and the ground. So it's very careful when you pack your suitcase, you got to pack, and you're going to put your tefillin in there, how you pack it. The Piskei Tshuva states that one may not sit on the same surface as tefillin. Tefillin on nimtzaim b'toch sakit, you have tefillin in a bag, or mizvada, or in a suitcase. Also, leishev alayim, you can't sit on the suitcase, or lanicham tachas rosho. You can't put it under your head like a pillow. If there's other things in the suitcase, just like sticking it in there, and with all the other things, it's also bizoyin to the tefillin. Afilu tefillin kiss b'toch kiss. Even though your tefillin is remember, you've already got the tefillin are in a box protector. That's already a kiss. And then you put it in a tefillin zekel, that's a kiss b'toch kiss. It's like double wrapping. Our black tefillin with the ritzus are not out there. They're covered with our tefillin boxes. That's the first kiss. And then you put them in a tefillin zekel, it's the second kiss. So it says, even if it's kiss b'toch kiss, but if you've put the tefillin in the suitcase on the floor, ein isser mikadin. Even shad film mustorm kiss b'toch kiss. Make adin, it's not osir. There should not be on the bottom. You should pack your tefillin like put a lot of things around the tefillin. So there's always going to be separation between your tefillin zekel and the ground. The tefillin should always be at least a tefach above the ground. Let's say there's a bench. On the bench are tefillin zekels. You can't sit on that bench. The same shasur b'sifrei kodesh. The same way, you can't if there's chumashim on a bench, you can't sit on the bench. Elam ken yaniach tachas tefillin is a davar mafsik she'eno client. You have to put not its own container. You got to put something in between the tefillin and the bench. The better is to be machmer to move the tefillin away from the bench, or should tefillin begova tefach mazal should be above the bench at least a tefach. The halachot recorded here regarding tefillin are based upon similar halachot regarding Torah scrolls and other sacred writings, which we learned in Yoreh Deah in Shulchan Aruch. We discussed some of those halachas. What about having relations in a room containing?
A comment about Sefer Torah. We had sent the Sefer Torah to Israel for Elchanan Yeshiva, and the Rebbe Chodesh, she was on a plane, and she was hesitant whether she should hold it. And the end result was El Al has a special cabinet just for Sefer Torah transportation, not in the luggage, but where the people are sitting, and the captain announced that we have a special passenger, a Sefer Torah, and everybody clapped and all that.
Wow.
Only by El Al.
Very nice. Very nice. The laws of tefillin are compared to those of a Sefer Torah with regard to another matter. As explained in the Baraisa and the discussion in the Gemara Brachos, it's forbidden to engage in intimate relations in the presence of tefillin. Tanya, this is Brachos Chaf Hei Amid Beis. Bayis sheyesh bo Sefer Torah tefillin. Also l'shamish bo samita ad sheyotziem. In a room that has a Sefer Torah tefillin, you can't have relations until you take it out of there. Or she'anichem kli b'toch kli. You have to put them in a kli, and the kli put in another kli. Amar Rabbi lo yishana lo b'kli she'enon klayin. That's only a vessel in their regular vessel, but not the second vessel has to be not their regular vessel. Aval b'kli she'u klayin afilu asar mani kechad manadan. It means it's got to be something different than what the first kli is, what the normal kli. You got to put it in something unusual. Harmish ben Levi, Sefer Torah, tzarach lasos mechitza sara. You need to have a mechitza 10 tvachim high. Marzutra a little bit Ravashi. Marzutra visited Ravashi. Chazal leduchtu demar Ravashi demanach be Sefer Torah v'avid le mechitza sara. He saw in one of the bedrooms of Ravashi, of Marbar Ravashi, that there was a Torah scroll, and there was a mechitza that was 10 tvachim. Amalei Kiman Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Is this like Rabbi Shua ben Levi who said that tzarach Torah for Sefer Torah you need a mechitza? Eimed Rabbi Shua ben Levi de les beis achrina. Rabbi Shua ben Levi perhaps only said that din because you didn't have any other room. But Mar ha isle beis achrina. But don't you have other rooms? Amalei lava daite. You know what? It didn't enter my mind that issue. If you had another room to put the Sefer Torah scroll, you could have done that. So it's clear from the Gemara that relations are permitted in the presence of tefillin if they are placed in a vessel within a vessel. Placing a mechitza of 10 tfachim in between the couple and the tefillin would also be acceptable, as the Gemara states that such a separation permits relations even in the presence of a Sefer Torah. Now, the Beis Yosef, citing a machlokas among the Rishonim, about how to interpret this kli b'toch kli. Perush Rashi, afilu asara mani, even if there are 10 vessels, v'kulam klayim, but they're the specific vessel that's used for tefillin, it's not kli b'toch kli. It's all considered chad man. It's like one kli. Umashma, it seems, she'im shnei kelim lohavi kelian, if the two vessels are not the regular vessel that you put your tefillin in, that's better. That even if none of them is their vessel, wow, he was really machmer. He said it's not considered a kli b'toch kli.
So Ernie,
How would Rav Yoina have a kli b'toch kli? They don't say. If Rav Yoina says that if each vessel was not its vessel, so Rav Yoina is basically saying it doesn't work. Now, who was that? Abe?
That's me, Bernie.
Bernie.
So if you have your tefillin in your tefillin zekel, and and then you put the tefillin zekel in your talis bag with the talis, is that a kli b'toch kli?
Let's
Or
keep
they're
Rav
both
Yoina-
the same material, and according to the opinion that's machmer, they wouldn't qualify.
Well, but I don't know. But the talis zekel is not the kli for the tefillin, right?
Right.
Well,
Just-
klayon means its thing. So let's see. Let's see.
Yeah, you have the box of tefillin as well.
The Beis Yosef explains that according to Rashi, the concept of a kli b'toch kli is predicated upon the assumption that the regular vessel does not constitute a true cover for this purpose. Therefore, there's a need for an additional cover other than the tefillin's standard cover. But if an additional cover alone was used without the tefillin cover, one covering may be sufficient. Well, the best option is to use two covers for cases that are not meant for the tefillin. However, it seems from Rabbeinu Yonah's comment that the concept of a kli b'toch kli requires having two different categories of vessels, namely one meant for the tefillin and one not meant for the tefillin. Perhaps the reason is that the one usually used with it is not significant enough to serve as a covering, and the one not usually used with it might be removed at any time to be used for something else, and therefore they cannot serve as a covering on their own either. See the Taz and Bach, who believe that the logic of Rabbeinu Yonah is impossible to explain. Like we said, I don't think we have an answer to Rabbeinu Yonah, and our text of Rabbeinu Yonah must be an error. However, see the Yalkut Piyurim of the Oz V'Hadar Mesifta edition of the Gemara, who cite Akronim that do suggest explanations from Yonah. So that's not needed for tonight. Practically speaking, the Shulchan Aruch rules in accordance with Rashi, and this is clarified by the Ramah, who states that if either or both of the utensils are not designated only for the tefillin, relations are permitted. Bayis sheyesh bo tefillin. Also l'shamish bo mitoso at sheyotzim, unless you take them out of the room, or shani came b'kli, or you put them in a kli b'toch kli. V'hu she'en hasheni miyuchad lehem. The second kli has to be a kli that's not miyuchad for tefillin. She'imu miyuchad, if it's a kli that is used for tefillin, afilu mea chashuvim ke'echad. Even 100, you put this into this bag, and this bag, and this bag, and this bag, and this bag, it's all one. Says the Ramah, if neither kli is miyuchad for the tefillin, o shapnimi, the inner one, enam miyuchad lehem, v'achitzon miyuchad lehem mutter. So if the inner one is not miyuchad for tefillin, v'achitzon miyuchad lehem mutter. The Mishnah Berurah writes in the name of the Taz that this halacha applies not only to tefillin, but also to other printed forms such as chumash or cedar. But he knows that the Chovas Yair is lenient in cases of need for printed sforim. It should be noted that the halacha is more lenient regarding bringing materials into the restroom. In that case, although tefillin must have a kli b'toch kli, other sforim may be brought in with only one covering. This question may arise when traveling and entering a public bathroom with one's backpack or suitcase. Tefillin v'uadin chumashim u'sidur tefillin or shar sforim. This is the same din by other sforim. Bein b'ksivo b'tfus, handwritten or printed. Hakol yesh ben kedusha, u'v'nin kli toch kli, and they need a kli b'toch kli. V'afilu em ksav mishita, a manuscript. V'ayin b'taz shekosov kol ha'mekel b'kedusha sforim anitfosim. Whoever is mekel with printed books, osid litein esadin. The tfus print avi k'moksiv is like writing. Ach b'tshuvas Chovas Yair. Printed is you if you didn't have something to cover it, is easier. The Mishnah Berurah adds a few other important points, a few sifim later. He explains that the concept of kli b'toch kli does not require placing the tefillin inside two enclosures. Rather, it simply requires them to be covered with two coverings, even if there's a different surface underneath. B'kli toch kli lav dafka kelim. Who adin shnei kisuyin covers. She just said like a towel. Then pirish talis. If you cover it with a talis or shar kisur la kishel tefillin, or you spread a talis or some other covering over the tefillin bag, avol pi shar kisui ena mechasar rak lamalo min atzdorim v'lo lamata. Maybe they cover this the tops and the sides, but not the bottom. That's permitted. Now here's Bernie. People who have their tefillin zekel placed inside a larger sack where you put your talis in there with the tefillin. He says it's a problem because that outside talis bag is considered a kli that's meyuchid. And therefore you'd need another cover on that. So that's not enough. You have to put it in another, like in a drawer or in a cabinet. That would be a kli b'toch kli. He says, unless you use the talis inside to cover the tefillin, the oshrei tatas and a client. So you take it. Hang on. If you take it, comes out to what he just said. If you take your tefillin zekel and put it in so that the talis is covering it, and then you put it in the sack, that would work. That's what the Mishnah Berurah says. Yes, Mario.
But also we have those covers on top of the talis cover. That would serve also, no? The transparent one, the protective ones. You know what I mean?
Let's hold.
Plastic, that's the plastic cover.
Right.
Oh, yeah, the plastic, yeah.
Let's hold on to that. Let's hold on to that until next week when we finish this. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Very good. I think we saw a lot of new things tonight. Okay. Everybody have a good Shabbos.
Thank you, good night.
Good night, everybody. Tomorrow night the Daf Yomi is at 8:00.
All right.